After 324 days in the hot seat, Noel Hunt is Reading manager no more. We're in uncharted territories on this pod because we've never had a manager sacked before. So we're going to
Indeed.
bumble through it as best as we can. Sad, but it is the right decision. We've been saying that for weeks on this podcast and in the articles on the Tilehurst end. So
Yeah.
not a surprise. Not a surprise. Ross, you're wearing what is essentially a Noel Hunt classic from
Indeed.
2012.
Great memory. Yeah. 2012. My I did my A levels. Uh and the team won. I actually, do you know a funny story from that season? And obviously Noel was a big part of that too. But I was doing my driving test that year too, and my instructor was a Southampton fan, and he actually drove us to the game that Reading stuffed them at St Mary's at. So it was a much more awkward car ride home, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, no, I think I picked out my 2012 jersey because I was like, no, as we said last week on the pod, deserved respect even when things weren't going well for him, but for what he had done for the club previously. And we've spoken before about the very, many different generations that have differing opinions about Reading and their place in the football world because of what they've experienced and things like that. And some, of the younger crowd may not know of Noel and what he did, but he was always a real workhorse for Reading as a player. So I want to respect what he did, and of course what he did with a really good season for the U21s back when they had Matty Carson and all those kinds of guys. So yeah, sad day. I think that's that's the top line, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into it a little bit more in what is essentially a bit of a mishmash of a recap, really. We've got, obviously, what games to talk about from yesterday. But before we do that, thank you as always to ZCZ Films for sponsoring us on this very pod and all the pods. And of course, the Amazons for giving us My Blood as a theme tune for our pod itself. We're going to get into the recap right about now. Okay, let's start with Noel being gone. We can talk about Doncaster in just a moment. It it felt like it's been coming for a few weeks now in terms of his overall, say behaviour. That sounds like he's done something wrong. He hasn't, but the way the team's been playing and the way in which the kind of the actual
I know what you mean by behavior. Sorry, just to jump in, like body language might be the phrase I always kind of think. It's like almost like subconscious behavior or unconscious behavior. The mood music hasn't been good. If you got in this elevator in the last few weeks, then you would have been like, steady on here, mate. I'm not so sure about, it doesn't seem like this one's going to get all the way up to the 16th floor. So yeah, it's been a
yeah.
bit, I know what you mean.
It's just been a slog, hasn't it?
Yeah.
The games have not been good, the performances have not been good, the results have not been good. The facts speak for themselves. 15 games and we've won three of them. It's just not been good enough. I said this after the game yesterday with what was another really poor performance and, in truth, poor result. What do you think? I mean, let's start with what probably did for him today in terms of Rob Coig and the board saying enough is enough. We need to make a change.
Hmm.
And we'll talk about the statement in a minute because I think as statements go for sackings, it's one of the better ones that I've read
Yep.
for sure.
I
There's
would
a lot
agree
of
with
love
that.
there. So I just in terms of what actually did for him, what was that really?
Yeah, I think that the issue that Noel had was that he just never seemed to show and talking, about the whole of 2025 and what it's been like for him. He never really seemed to show kind of a understanding and an ability to change the problems in the team. And the thing that I still don't really know after all of this time is what does a Noel Hunt team look like? What does it do? What are its principles? Is it an attacking kind of team? I think we can kind of say that the idea is to be sort of stodgy, but they've been very middle of the table for the whole year in terms of how many shots they allow the opposition to take and all those kinds of things. So, yeah, they haven't really had much of an identity, and I think that's been part of the issue. obviously the kind of the kind of like give him time argument in the last few weeks has been given a little bit, or it's kind of been like backed up a little by the fact that Sellers was able to turn things around, with that little bit of extra time. But I think that there was signs of tinkering and like attempts to change things, and there was also, an identity to the style that was coming out. And I just don't really think we know where we're going towards with No. I think it's become a little bit aimless, and giving, that, just telling the players to go out and do, what they can. So look, there's definitely an argument to be made that this team was always going to need a little bit of time to gel. But I think, again, if we're thinking about things that have kind of done for him, obviously he hasn't had Jack Marriott, he hasn't had Joel Pereira in the last few games. But these have not been games with, with a ton of, where those particular. No, that's it. I'm not going to say these aren't games where those particular players would be able to make a big difference. But what you have to acknowledge with Maria, and that he would have made a difference, I'm sure, is that he's also like three times outscoring his XG, and like he's far, far and away doing better than we would expect him to do so far. He will eventually regress. So even if that player had come back and done better, I don't think it would have been quite the impact that he needed. And that kind of spoke to it, is that some of those press conferences. I mean, you spoke about just now his behavior or his body language. Some of the press conferences were just starting to get into excuse making territory. And I think that when there's no discernible identity on the pitch, and then you start to hear excuses when questions are asked, it's often talk about the referee, there's often talk about the injuries, there's often talk about the level of experience that the players have. I think that kind of just showed he's not up for it here. He's not up for the fight. And I think that was an issue. The last thing I think that really if like there was like one last thing outside of the performances, because people know how I feel about the performances, that maybe did for him, was describing yesterday's front line as it was a young front line. Now, I agree. And if we're talking about like actual ages, sure, yeah, they would have a young average age or whatever. But I think we know what Noel is getting at there, is that they don't have that much experience or something like that. And I just don't think that you can say that with that front line there. You had, Daniel Chirwa, who, yes, has just come to England, but to all intents looks like a decent player, or a player that a good manager could make something out of. Kelvin Ehibachi, man, is a player that Reading just went out and re-signed for 2 years this year. So if Noel thinks, he's young, he's still, then, like, why do we give him all that money in the summer? And then Paddy Lane is, not only a player that, we went out and actually spent money on, but he's a player that's done well in this division before. So, when another manager has already had success with a player, and then another, a manager comes in 2 years later and refers to that player as young, I think it just kind of spoke to, again, excuse making and not having a sense of, while the squad, regardless of your feelings about the squad, whether you think it's a squad that can push for, automatics or playoffs, or it's a mid-table squad or whatever, I don't think any of us think that it's a relegation candidate squad. And that at the moment is where we are. So yeah, I think those are kind of the things off the field that stick
It's
at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we were slightly concerned the other week when Rob Cowick did the question and answer session at the stadium on the pitch, and said, Noel's our guy and we're going to back him. Well, not, he didn't say back him, but, basically intimated that there was a long-term project for Noel to kind of see through. And,
Hmm.
we were slightly concerned by that, both privately and publicly, and TTE towers around what that actually meant, because everyone could see that the team was underperforming on the pitch, and clearly he couldn't, and he felt that the football on offer was okay. Fast forward, literally a few weeks later, and he releases a statement to say, "I've made the decision to terminate the contract of first team manager Noel Hunt. This is a difficult day for everyone at Reading Football Club. As I said recently, football is a performance-based business, and while we have seen moments of progress this season, results have not reached the level required. After honest discussions inside the club in recent weeks," and that's the thing I'm struggling with, "I believe this is the right moment to make a change to move us forward." Now, in terms of timelines, right? you would think that he would then have started those conversations directly after that Q&A session. Would you not? Like,
I mean,
it's an odd one, isn't it? Because he's backed him then,
the
but now
thing
he's saying,
is,
well, actually, we've
though,
been talking about it for a while, under the covers. It seems a bit odd.
football fans talk about that as kind of the kiss of death, though, don't they? A little bit like when you've got the backing of the board, that's sort of like finding the horse head in your bed.
Well,
It's a bit like
they
any day
do, but
now.
that's the weird thing about it. He didn't. I mean, if you just look at the timelines, that's
Hmm.
the thing that I'm kind of fixated on at the moment in terms of like he's gone out in front of X amount of people. He's done a raffle for a signed shirt. He's answered questions, with a cup of Nescafe or whatever he had from the concourse in his hands, and he's kind of talking about the club and stuff. And now he's saying actually we've been talking about this for a few weeks. Like those two things just don't add up really at the moment. And I think I my feeling is that he is kind of listened and looked online as I guess Todd Trustclair has. I don't know, in terms of how much Joe Jacobson is in terms of interaction, but certainly those two to begin with were very, very vocal and very, very you know engaging with the fans on social media.
Yep.
But now it just feels like he's kind of pulled the trigger before he gets too toxic. There were calls which I think was disrespectful, and I don't think anyone needed to hear that. But from 1871 about getting sacked in the morning and all this kind of stuff, that
Yeah, we
that that
don't
didn't
condemn
leave
that
didn't leave a
really.
great taste for me
No.
personally. I get why people do it, and it's a common thing with managers at clubs that are underperforming. But do you feel that he's looked at this and gone, we've got to do this now, given the timing of the season, but also the kind of the overwhelming churn of fans that were starting to really get on his back?
I really think that I think something that you've been talking about through the season, kind of like the end of the transfer deadline day video that Noel and Joe Jacobson released. I kind of think that some of the initial like tensions that you could see in the back, with the club were beginning then. And I think that, Noel obviously feels that the summer should have gone differently in terms of personnel recruitment. I've said a few times that I don't unfortunately think that Noel had the amount of cachet that he needed as a manager to make that kind of request, especially with, when the club was going through this kind of transition period. But I wonder if again, I just mentioned that he called the front line, including Paddy Lane, young in this game just gone. I do wonder if that speaks to some tensions that were going on behind the scenes. And I wonder if those tensions have started to boil over in the last week or so. And it's funny because, like I was saying last week, you were saying 6 points is probably the minimum for these two games. And I was like, I think four would probably be fine. Well, he's got four and he's gotten fired. So obviously, you were right that he needed these two. But I think that really this last week was just emblematic of who Noel Hunt is as a manager at this stage in his career and what Reading could have expected to get out of him moving forwards. And that was, the game against Cardiff, where clearly the players were fired up. And that's something that Noel's always been able to do. He's always been able to get the players going. I agree with you completely that I don't think the players stopped playing for him. I think they were still putting in. Paddy Lane put in an absolute shift against Doncaster. That man must be absolutely exhausted today. I think the players were still moving for him. But yeah, it was kind of this, big up, performance against Cardiff. We still lost, but this big performance
And
versus Cardiff, and then followed up by two games in which we averaged under one expected
yeah,
goal. And so
and
that's the issue.
you could argue, I think it's pertinent to talk about those recent games, because you could argue that Cardiff was possibly our overall best performance of the season.
Yeah, I
People
think
listening
that's
to this will
right.
go, "Shut up, Ben." But like for me, having watched the game, I do feel that we were very, very good in spells and we still lost. And
Hmm.
had we even got a draw out of that game, or we were in a winning position for a period of time, had we got a positive result, I think that would have been possibly a catalyst for change. But
Mm.
actually, like, there might have been some internal sort of resignation from both the players and the staff in that we've thrown everything at it. Yes, we are, we are playing Cardiff, who've had a but we still couldn't get anything out of the game. And, just kind of not collapse, but, you could just see the kind of, the enthusiasm and the endeavour just kind of dissipate in the game as Cardiff went on to win it. So, had that have been a positive result, we may well have gone on a bit of a run. But I
Yeah.
do feel that, with as much respect as I can give to Doncaster, that was a game we should have won yesterday, and we
Well,
needed to
so
win
that,
desperately, I think.
do you think, okay, so, all right, so if you just look at the stats, Doncaster dominated us yesterday. I know obviously the shots are going to tell you that the Reading had more shots or whatever. Reading don't shoot the ball in the box like ever. So like the shots are almost irrelevant because I'm being facetious now, but the Reading basically didn't start getting shots in the box until like the 70th minute or something like that in the game against Doncaster. Doncaster had over 2 XG in this game. They were able to generate like 5 or 6 shots right in the middle of the box. Like Stevens had a good game, and Stevens was
Did he?
yeah. Well, see this. Yeah, see, I knew you would say that, and that's why I say Stevens had a good game because he made several decent saves while
Yeah,
also
but
doing
he
some of the strangest things I've ever seen
the
at
goal
other
wasn't
times.
good, and in the first half he spilled one, and literally I thought I was
Yeah,
going to throw up because I was like, and even the guy behind me was like, he should have caught that, and he
yeah.
should have, put his hat on it, but they just. And at that point, the defensively it didn't seem to be the confidence. I mean, the goal was embarrassing to concede. Their goalie pulled off some really good saves, and then obviously chuck one in the net to get us back in. Like we from a pod point of view, just to break the fourth wall, we're messing around now. We're talking to Hunt, and then we flipped into Doncaster.
No,
So
that's
we'll
fine.
we'll stick on Doncaster, then we'll come back to Hunt.
Well, actually, I can stitch the two together
Oh,
if
go
you
on then.
like. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
watch
go on.
me. So basically, the other kind of like what did for Hunt thing, I think genuinely would have been the first half in this game, or maybe the first 60 minutes of this game, regardless of how the game ended up. And there's no way we should have got back into this, by the way. Like the goalkeepers had an absolute mare there for Doncaster to let that one in. He's tried to catch it and he's let it straight through his hands. So we should have lost this game. If you watch the first half back, Doncaster were, while having much less of the ball than us, were able to get the ball into the dangerous position sort of in the middle of our half, entering the final third over and over again, which is something that we weren't able to do. They were able to bait us onto them, and obviously we saw their goalie got booked for one of their weird little build out from the back things that didn't quite work, but they were able to just bait us onto them, and they basically made Ben Elliott run around for his dinner for a half of football doing absolutely nothing because he couldn't get anywhere near them, and they managed to get their number 10 facing the correct direction over and over and over again. And if you know what you're looking at with football, you kind of know like that's a lot of the ball game is like getting the ball to your center midfielders facing up the field, so that
Mm.
they can be creative, so they can get the ball back out to your wingers and things like that. Doncaster could do it time and time again, even with less opportunities on the ball than us, and we couldn't do it.
Mm.
And that really just showed you the footballing difference between the two sides.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that. I think Doncaster were pretty rugged in their approach, and obviously Billy Sharp had to score because that's law, isn't it? There has to be. He always scores against his old clubs.
Yeah, yeah,
I the thing that frustrated me a little bit was the criticism. There was criticism yesterday in the Down, and believe it or not, and no one got thrown out for sharing it. Um, the the criticism that Kelvin E was getting, he looked a lot better when the ball was in on his feet
yeah.
rather than him battling for headers and stuff because there was no one there, getting the knockdowns. But for me, had we been able to play the ball into his feet a little bit more, I think we would have had potentially a slightly different outcome to the game. It might have even got on the score sheet. The thing that I really and flicking it back to Hunt now again is that he has not got right the balance of the transitions between the midfield and the forward play. So in that final third this season, and I'm sure you've got a stat to back it up, but we've been really, really bad, really, really bad. On the eye, statistically, Jack
Yeah.
Marriott if we'd be long gone at the bottom of the table by now had he not scored the goals that he has, and now he's missing. We're relying on other people. Was it a good shot from Doyle yesterday? So, but the goalie should have saved that too, and he didn't.
Easy.
So,
Yeah.
really, the new person coming in has got to be able to get that forward line working and being cohesive. And Dan Kay yesterday he had an absolute uh, well.
I thought
Look, he's a young
I,
player. He's still in the league. I didn't rate him at all yesterday. I really
I thought
didn't.
he had a few he had a few good ones. He got into the box for a shot. I mean, like he was one of the only players who did manage to get into the box for a shot. He got more
Mm.
shots in the box than Kelvin yesterday, I think. I do have a big fancy stat for you, and I've been waiting to drop this on you, but I did some research last night, so I can go and
Is
go
is
and
it going to support my what I've just said, or is it going to blow out the water in a negative way?
no, I think it's just like a kind of like oh, we're talking about like being in the box and like in the sorry in
Yeah.
the final third. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Goes right off the back of your thing in the final third. So I basically went and took a look at this season. Where Hunt has now lost his job after 13 games versus the 23-24 season, which I bang on about all the time because my boyfriend Sellers was coaching us that season. But we weren't that good, right? In 23-24, we were good for about a third of the season. We were okay for a third of it, and we were awful for a third of the season, right? So it wasn't that good of a season in that particular year, we were basically able to get an average of 6.88, so almost 7 shots in the box per game, under Hunt this season, and it's 5.69 shots in the box per game. So literally, under Hunt, and this is a team in 23-24 that at times was relegation threatened as well. This is a team that is now averaging one fewer shot in the box per game. And just they have finally started taking shots again, this Reading team, but they're all just Lewis Wing frustrated from 40 yards out, shooting, which is just, again, we talked about repeatable success, sustainable progress, things like this. It's just not sustainable. And this has been Noel's biggest issue the whole year. He can get us into the final third. He can't get us into the box then. There's no creativity once we reach that final third. And that has, been shown in the numbers. We literally get more than one fewer shot in the box per game on average than versus a pretty meh season in 23-24. So, and that's how much worse it's gotten that quickly.
And I was talking to someone yesterday actually who I hate doing this, but someone at the football, and there's a reason why I'm saying this. So someone, came up to me and said, "Oh, listen to the pod and blah 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 blah." And they said, "Oh, what do you think will happen with Hunt?" And I said, "Well, I disagree with Ross in the fact that I think he'll be given until, I think you said he'd have
I
another
thought he'd be
couple of
given
weeks."
until December. I'm surprised that
Yeah,
this happened today.
I mean, I said I disagreed with you on that, but the thing that I keep coming back to, and I said it to this guy yesterday, is that your point about name one young player,
Hmm.
and by extension any player that he's had since he joined on the 7th of December 2024, he's made better,
Yeah.
with with the possible exception of Charlie Savage because there's a trust element there. Um,
Yeah, and I think Charlie
has
needed an arm around him after
yeah,
the
has he
previous
made him
manager.
technically better? I don't think so. I think, you could argue Pereira, but again, he was always going to be one of our top performing players. I don't think there's anyone there,
Yeah.
particularly from a youth perspective, that he's really developed, and that really is what you're talking about in terms of coaching. It's all well and good being a manager, doing a press conferences and engaging with people and all the rest of it, but there has not been any movement at all for me. And I at you, because you said it was your point, um, around development of those players,
Yeah.
and that really is the most frustrating thing, because that was a very well, it was a very good squad that, on reflection, should have got in the playoffs, but didn't. And then was kind of partly disbanded. I mean, I sort of buy into this, or we've actually got worse players instead. But these players have not gone on to better things. Bindon hasn't played a minute or something since August.
He hasn't
You
played
know,
since Sellers left
Nibs is not.
Sheffield. Yeah.
Last time I checked, Nibs wasn't really featuring for Charlton either. So, and Bengay, you could probably say okay, but
And Benge's having a good year. Yeah.
it's
Which,
QPR. Anyone would have a good year at QPR. Do you know what I mean? I'd have a good year
well,
at
hang on
QPR.
a minute. What possible new Reading boss Gareth Ainsworth didn't have a very good time at QPR,
Well, exactly right.
you
Yeah, but
know?
I just, for me, the overall approach to developing those players has not been there,
Sam
and he hasn't
Smith as
done
well.
that.
Sorry, Ben. I really apologize. I just wanted to
Yes,
just
Sam
jump in
Smith.
to back up your point. Sam Smith played, let me see here, 14 minutes in October.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
So
really, I'm not really sure how that links to what I'm saying about him not developing players. But what I
no,
mean
no,
is,
but well, yeah, yeah, but I
have those
think
players been found out? Is what I mean. They were good before Noel Hunt turned up, right?
yeah,
He
well,
didn't make them better players. You
I
know,
think yeah, I mean like and that was one of the things that defined Sellers as well, and that he was good at. Like he brought Bindon through. He made Mbenge a better player. He made Craig a better player. He made Garcia a better player. Where's Garcia? Like I don't know where he is. I
well,
mean
he's apparently he's injured.
he's injured. Okay, all right, so that's fine. I saw Liam Fraser's injured too, and I hate the way that injuries are reported in football. Like at least in American sports, they have to say this player out, lower body injury or something like that. So you get the report and you know what's happening. With this, it's like you follow random, newspaper articles and you'll see it. Yeah, it's disappointing, but yeah, the squad is, if you go and look at the seasons that, as we're saying here, that the players that we lost are having in the championship outside of Mbenge,
Mm.
the squad that we have now, is yeah, probably not quite as, I think there are some places in which we're a little bit weaker for not having, the players that we had, but there's also places that we're stronger. Like Paddy Lane, if he continues to play like he did yesterday, will turn out to be a much
He
better
might score
signing
a
than
goal.
Chem Campbell. He might score a goal again eventually too. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a shame for Noel, but a very typical
Mm.
final week. A good performance, but a loss. And then 2 games in which you're expected to go out and get something, and you put in two pretty shonky performances.
Um, we we need to talk about what the possible outcomes are now moving forward. I I think we should just go into the mailbag because there's questions around that, so I think we can just do all that in one go.
All right, that sounds like a
So
plan.
let's go to the mailbag right now. Welcome back to I don't know what episode number it is.
Nibs is coming off the bench as well. Just if you wanted,
Oh, he is. Okay,
I'm
fine.
giving a heads up on that one too. Yeah, Nibs has not started a game yet for Charlton. So
Okay.
again, like if you just want to, if we want to compare the squad to this year's squad, I think there's some valid comparisons in there.
We're episode 437 for fans of chronology. Do you know we've got 81 reviews on Spotify, and
Oh.
we're on 5 stars.
That's very nice. That's very kind of you. I did start putting in
So
a
that's good.
little thing that asks for reviews at the end of the pod sometimes. So if you are doing that, thank you very much. Much
Appreciate it.
appreciated. Come on by on YouTube too. There's all kinds of fun things.
Yeah, yeah. We've neglected a bit of YouTube, haven't we? But
Oh,
um
got the regular part, we're looking at you right now, YouTube. All right,
yeah.
mailbag.
Well, you're looking at me while I randomly
Right.
scramble around trying to find the
Yeah, yeah.
flipping
Why you
mailbag,
keep
which I
looking at
never ever bookmark, by the way. Every week I go, I'll bookmark that, and then I never ever do. And it's because of all the traffic today, it's well down our feed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a bit in there, really. There is a bit in there, obviously around the same thing. So let's go to Jamie. Jamie actually asked me who my NBA team was,
It's
which I
the
really appreciate.
Chicago Bulls, is it not?
No, how dare you?
Oh, it's
No,
Minnesota.
I have been to Chicago.
Well, I've seen you
Um,
wearing what looks like an Oxford shirt before, and I was like, but luckily it was Chicago.
well, no, I mean, actually, that's a good point. I've been outed. My team is the Timberwolves, but to be
Yeah.
honest, any NBA fashion, I'm like, yeah, go on.
Yeah, yeah. I liked the old sleeves era. They look kind of silly. It made me, yeah.
Phoenix
There's,
Suns, like the badge of the Phoenix Suns is amazing. 'Cause it's like a,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I like
There's
the old
a,
school Raptors one. That's really good.
yeah, the Raptors one is very good.
I just like
Yeah, yeah,
NBA. I just like American things. That's why I talk
yeah.
to
Yeah,
you.
just like me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I'm British.
Um. Anyway, I digest.
Yep.
Would you
Okay.
would you want experience or potential in a new manager? That is question of the evening.
Do you know what
There's
I
some
want?
stat about how many of the previous few managers to get promoted from League One had next to no EFL experience. McKenna, Messinio, Chris Davis, ugh, yuck, Des Buckingham. However, a couple of them did have major resources. Um, I okay. Do you want? I guess really the next thing is. Oh God, there's so many questions. There's
I
so
can
little
jump onto
time.
this pretty quickly. Who do we
Um,
want next? Because, like, I think that's the basic question.
okay, and then I'll come back with my other question but you'll probably answer anyway. So,
Right.
do you
Yeah.
want experience or potential?
Yeah, exit left, a bear. The five people that get that joke are gonna love it. So anyway, yeah, I think the obvious thing. I mean, like, look, I bang on about things like XG and stuff like that. So you know that I'm gonna want somebody who's in that, understanding of those kinds of modern ways of looking at the game and stuff like that. I will not be too upset though if we end up with somebody who has been around in league, in the EFL for a long time. I wouldn't necessarily want to pay another club a decent sized fee for a manager like Ainsworth is the obvious one that gets thrown around. I've heard Holloway's name get thrown around as well. And these are obviously more old school English managers. I do still think that that can work in League One. I think that I've talked about how like a lot of teams last year had a kind of 3-5-2 and hoofed the ball up to a big man strategy. Phil Parkinson, worked fine with Wrexham, did a lot better than expected with Wrexham in League One last year, playing that very, direct style. So I don't really have any issue with that way. But like the main thing I've been thinking is for the last few weeks is I keep being like trying to want to do like some sort of like tactical rundown of like what is going on under Noel Hunt and all these kinds of things. And sometimes there's a few things that I can like pick out. But like if you've heard me like or if you feel like I'm talking about stats more this year, you're not going crazy. I am because oftentimes I have to go looking into them to find something to talk about because the tactics are just so Sunday league or have been that there's just been so little to talk about. So more important to me than like what if is it an experienced manager? Is it someone young and modern like Matt Bloomfield or Luke Williams is one that myself and Sim have talked about a few times. I don't think it really matters to me too much whether they come, from the less experienced, more experienced pool. I just want the team and the coach to have an identity and to have a sense of what it is they want the team to do. Sellers came in with very little EFL experience, but we were like, he is a pressing manager. Like we knew that going in, we knew what he was going to try and do to the squad. And so at least then we could kind of like quantify in our heads, all right, he's trying to do this. Like, yes, the 4-2-2-2 isn't working. I know why he's using it at least. But yeah, so an identity, a coach with an identity is more important to me versus experience or, modern, not much.
It's been a slog for you, hasn't it, this season? And
It has been.
it's spot on. Like, yeah, we're looking more at stats than we are style, and oh yeah, this pulled this player out of this possession, and we're able to pull the opposition off the ball and all these kind of things, and I'm just saying random things that you'd say to be honest with you, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's been really hard to tactically analyze it
It's been
for
very
you.
basic. Like I said,
Yeah,
like last week, because we were trying to find positives in like what Reading were doing well. And I said like they are capable of putting a first time ball into the channel. And then from that, their wingers are fast enough that they could make, a ball into the danger zone across the front of the box 2 or 3 times a match. But it's League One. As often as we see, the opposition get into a really good position and blast the ball over the net, that's going to
yeah.
happen with us as well. So you need, to have a consistent way of creating a lot of chances for your players to score from, basically. And as you said in this pod, progressing through the final third was just not something that Noel ever showed an ability to get his team to do.
I think the only way to answer that question, Jamie, is to look at it in a different way and say, are we bringing someone in to just get us back on track for this season?
Mm.
Or are we bringing someone in, and it's stupid to go, oh, yeah, be here for the next 3 years because we know what football is like, right? We all know, that that's not going to be the case. But, um, are they going to look at it and go, right, we're in a rescue job now in terms of this season? I still think we can push up the league. The table is tight. I think you said that the last pod, but go on a run of 3 or 4 games. We're back in the playoff spots pretty much. So,
Yeah.
the question really is like, do they want someone to just get us through this year, and it becomes a kind of, you sign a contract until the end of the season, then we see where we're at, or do they want to build something with this squad that has got the potential? And I don't subscribe to this. It's not a good team. It is a good team. There's some good players in there, particularly the ones we brought in. You think about Portsmouth fans and how they felt about Paddy Lane and Doyle, obviously Jack Marriott as well, in terms of the pedigree that he had coming into the club. So there are good players there. There are good players, and I just think, for someone coming in who needs those raw ingredients for the club to do well on the pitch, there's a lot there. And this goes back to weeks and weeks ago when I got absolutely killed for saying I don't support the manager, I don't support the players, because they will always come and go. It's the club, right? I want someone in who's gonna get us back to where we need to be, which is, really the championship and potentially higher, and someone who's going to need to be able to meet the owner's requirements of getting us back up there. So,
Do you
they,
wonder, Ben, if we need someone at the moment to sort of a manager who can come in? Because you're talking about like whether they'd be here for longer than, just now, whether you bring in a firefighter. And I think that because it's early in the season and there is still time to press on, you bring in someone who you would hope would be around for longer, could build a project. I almost wonder if, you know, given that Joe Jacobson is a very new football CEO and things like that, that part of what they want, they will need out of the manager at the moment, is someone to kind of sell the project and the vision and things like that to, the squad and new players and things. And that kind of goes into what you've talked about them, the ownership probably wanting to have their own man eventually, as the head coach. But I do also wonder if, versus, Joe Jacobson is obviously a guy who's got a lot of EFL playing experience, but not so much, executive experience yet. And I do wonder if bringing in a manager with a little bit of know-how and nous and all that kind of stuff, it may partially be a way to, just kind of like sell the project and bring in more players and bring in, a better way for the club.
well, the problem is when we brought those players in, who I said,
Anyway, yeah.
are good on paper, I don't think there was any real thought process around how they were all going to be, put together. I, that's really the concern. It felt like in the end, everyone was like, "You got to sign some players," and they went, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll sign all these players." And it's like, well, how do they fit together though? Like, what's the thread that's going to hold them? Are we going the pressing way? Are we going the 4-4-2? Like, what is it
Right.
about these players that we, what's the profile? Young, hungry players. No,
Right, like under Sellers, we went and got guys who could,
yeah,
like, even when they were raw, like we knew what they could do. Like, so Sellers went out and he got Savage, who we know, like, for anything that you think about Savage, whether you're like whether you're Ben, you're not the biggest fan if you're a listener because you're not Ben, but whether you're like the second biggest Savage fan ever, or you'd think he's awful, no one could deny that the boy's got like an engine and will run forever. We had Harvey Nibbs come in at that time who had an engine and could run forever. We had Smith come in at that time who had an engine and could run forever. And again, it's kind of spoke to that profile of player that we were looking for. And I do, definitely agree that looking back now, some of the summer decisions do seem a bit, slapdash in the way that they were put together. What the actual goal was overall in terms of the squad construction is still a little bit unclear. However, to speak, in defense of the staff that put that squad together, I don't think Noel was showing them what direction to go in. Like, you need some cues from your coach as like, what do you need?
absolutely right.
And like, Brian Carey is a good like recruitment
Hmm.
guy, but like he can only go and he needs to be told what the profile is that he's going out to get. And I think that all just like I think it just I think we're really that was kind of like it for Noel. It's a little bit overwhelming, the whole experience of being where he wasn't a club. Definitely he was doing maybe a bit more than you would really want, yeah, a new manager to be doing at the club. But yeah, I just think that because there was no obvious identity, it was very difficult to go out and purchase players for that.
I mean, this leads on to George, who says, if it's not Matt Bloomfield, I'll eat my hat. Don't eat the hat. It's
Don't eat
really
the
bad
hat.
for you.
Is that
The
Georgie
hats are
Dawes?
really bad for you, actually,
Yeah, yeah.
aren't they?
No, I wouldn't eat a hat. I mean, if you were going to eat a hat, I would say eat like a visor because, like, I suppose that's. I mean, is a visor a hat though, or is a visor a visor? So
Mm,
maybe, yeah.
it's a
When is
cross
a spade a
between
spade?
sun care and hattage, isn't it? Actually, I was
Mm.
going to ask you, do you have Doritos in America?
Come on now. Doritos came from America. Like those are
Did they?
American, yeah, those are American crisps that you're eating right there. Yeah, Doritos are often paired with like Mountain Dew, and they're a kind of your average Fortnite gamer likes, or Call of Duty gamer likes his Doritos and Mountain Dew, and I like my Doritos too. But they call, you
When in
call
Rome?
it Cool Original in England, right? It's like the light blue
Yeah.
pack is Cool Original. Yeah, that's called Cool Ranch in America. And they think it's very
Nice.
odd that we call that the ranch one original because to them, the nacho cheese one is the original.
Yeah, the
So,
nacho cheese ones are amazing. The cheese
yeah,
ones, yeah.
yeah, you like those. Anyway,
So don't eat any hats. It's not good.
no, eat Doritos. They look a little bit
Yeah,
like sombreros.
they do.
Yeah.
Another uninspiring get your mates in type appointment. Honestly, these Wickham hires are starting to leave a sick taste in my mouth. Luke Williams is the project manager we need. Other outside picks I like Damien Duff and JOP. I'm
Oh,
not
Damien
keen on Matt
Duff.
Bloomfield. Yeah,
I like
he's
Matt
Sherborne, isn't
Bloomfield. I like the idea too for sure, and I think that again, like I think that's a manager that Luton were maybe at the time that they were going through what they have been going through in the last 2 years, or maybe it was a bridge too far for him, having
he?
only had that period at Wickham previously, and our good buddy Ryan will tell us over and over that Matt Bloomfield did have a drop off, before he left Wickham. It did snake off a little bit, but I would imagine, given that he did eventually move on, to Luton midway through that year, that there were probably some things swirling around for him around the time just before he left. So I'm not going to mark him down too much for the period where he was being headhunted for the first time, as a manager, basically. Yeah, I would be happy to have Bloomfield for sure. Luke Williams would still be, like the number one place that I would go. But yeah, I just again want some kind of manager with an identity again.
Tom Sheeran, this was the only way we have a shot at finishing the top six. I expect any manager that comes in has an impressive start. This squad is very good. Just need to nail down playing style and game management. Couple of additions in Jan, and we'll be firing. Best wishes to Noel. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, look,
best wishes
it's
to Noel for sure.
absolutely ridiculous for us to sit here and go, well, if they get top six, it's a failure. I mean, at the moment, we just want to push away from the relegation zone. But I do feel this squad, and we keep saying it on paper, is capable of a lot more. And
On
that's
the
that's that's the whole issue.
on the comms yesterday, they kept saying that Reading were ninth in the form table. So I think that's like the last 5 games or something like that. And obviously, like the league is very like squished together this year. Like, and a lot of the teams that started hot, like Doncaster, have had a period where they've fallen off, and that's brought like a lot of those teams that had a slower start. I think Blackpool are starting to get some points under their belt now. That they're now pushing up, and so the league is condensed for sure. And that kind of is the only thing that would kind of say to you like, hey, you could still push up to top six. But I think really my point was just pointing out that even in this poor period for Reading, the form table still has them in the top 10. Just shows again that the league's weak, and the squad quality, regardless of whether you think that it's good enough to for promotion right this second, it's never been close to relegation quality, like
No.
never. And obviously, like part of that ninth in the form table came about because Jack Merritt has just been on fire, and will not remain that much on fire, I don't think, forever. So, not all of that. It was to say that, like, we're actually good. But I just think that the players over and over again showed that they were not the issue with this particular team, and yeah, deserve a chance to push on up now. And hey, I was saying last week that a lot of seasons, we've seen good Reading seasons really get started in November. So
Mm.
now there's a chance to do that.
Um, Alistair, what are the attributes that you want in a new manager, and how do you get the balance between style of play and results? That's
Mm.
definitely one for you, that.
I think that something that Noel tried to do when he first came in, especially last season, was to try and make the team a bit more solid. We talked about that a lot. And I think that doing that, unless you're a very particular kind of manager who can like put together a style that will guarantee you, almost 2 goals a game on average, then you really need to start from like some sort of sound foundation. Whether that be through being a team that sits pretty far back and is willing to absorb pressure, or whether that be through pushing your rest defense really high, and trying to press onto the other team to win that ball back. Um,
I think in
yeah,
terms of the results, right? So off the top of my head, I think
thank you.
we've
Yeah,
drawn
got off there.
6 games this season, right?
Hmm.
I think, again, off the top of my head, I think that's the most in the league in terms of draws. So we're not a million miles off from getting these results. The problem is, and this is going to sound absolutely ridiculous in terms of obvious stuff, but like the performances have not allowed us because of the in-game management to be able to go on and win those games.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a really good point. It was pointed out. I think Reading have conceded like 6 goals in the 15 minutes after half time this
Yeah.
season.
What,
And
what is
what's
it? What
going
do they
on
do?
there?
Do you know what? Just do this, lads, and you'll be fine. Every
Yeah,
single time they concede. Well,
it
six
is.
times, whatever.
Yeah, no, it is literally. Yeah, well, it's either something that Noel's saying, but I think more likely, it's also that, the opposition coach is able to come in and say, this is what they're
Do this.
doing. If you do this, you will be able to find spaces where you can go 2v1 against one of their fullbacks or something like that. And then you are in with a chance to cross, which is something that Reading was just happening to Reading over and over again. And I think they add another brick to the wall. Like, I think that's another thing that unfortunately did for Noel, was that every time he tried to make the team a bit more expansive and able to push forwards, he didn't seem to know how to do that without leaving a lot of space in behind his fullbacks.
Yeah.
And yeah, so look, the reason I bring up the making the back line solid first, and that being a thing that Noel did try to do to his credit, is because I think that in this league the results will come faster if you do that, if you solidify the back, and then get used to adding more goals on top. Um, yeah, I think that's what I think.
Um, my attributes would be anyone who gets the flipping fullbacks playing football.
Mm.
And
Someone who
anyone
doesn't
who's
switch the fullbacks on the 60th minute for no apparent reason. Like, I
yeah,
thought Braith
and
was fine again, but whatever.
regardless of how negative we've been on Omani, don't keep bringing him on in the 90th minute. What is the point?
Yeah, some of the the substitutions, like it's almost
That's
like
insanity.
it was crazy. Like some of that you did wonder. Like there's clock management that's talked about a lot in NFL football, and how some coaches are very good at it and some coaches are not very good at it. And if you watch American sports, you'll often see that there are clocks like everywhere, like all around the like baseball, basketball, football. There's clocks everywhere, and you're using it to like manage the time and stuff like that. And obviously in a football stadium, you've got like the jumbotron things as well. And I genuinely
Yeah.
wonder with some of these subs, like, has Noel just like lost track of time? Like, with some of them, whereby it's like, was he planning on bringing them on in like the 80th minute or the 85th minute and just forgot for a minute, or like something happened in the game, he got distracted, and from there, like, yeah, it's just not enough time, is it, to affect the game? Like, that's the kind of time when you bring in a sub just to like like run around and help see out a win, maybe. It's not necessarily like, all right, you've got 3 minutes, boys, go out there and change everything.
Talking to management, right? So I'm sat in the kitchen. My cat has just come down the stairs. He's
Okay.
he's given me the eyes as he's walked past the island that I'm sat on, right?
Yeah.
And he's basically now troughing his biscuits like really loudly,
What does
almost like a
troughing
dirty
mean?
protest, as in
Like,
like just like not nibbling them, just literally. It sounds like he's sticking his head in there, and the biscuits are going all
okay.
over the tray. Like it literally, like, can you not hear that?
Clearly your cat was Hunt in and he's just trying to disrupt this
Well,
podcast,
it's just
and get his
yeah.
opinion out there. Jeez.
Um,
He liked pull
Although
into your cat,
ironically,
so
he Noel Hunt has been associated with the club, um, or the cat's been alive, just a little bit less than Noel Hunt's been
Oh,
associated with the
really?
club. So there's a nice
There you
nice
go.
synergy there.
There you go.
Got him in 2010, and Noel Hunt joined in 2012, I think.
Or
2012.
maybe, I thought maybe before that, but I'll look that up while you read the
No,
next one.
2008 he joined, didn't he, Noel
Yeah, I was
Hunt?
gonna say, I think it was a bit
Yeah,
earlier
that's it.
than
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. You know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying
I
to say.
know what you're trying to say.
Max. Oh, this is the stunner. This one.
All right.
And I genuinely don't have the answers. Who would Ross and Ben's snog, marry, avoid be on the next appointment? So the snog is an unrealistic chance, but an unrealistic choice, but most desirable.
Ooh, that's a cool one.
Marry, good match, realistic in getting, avoid at all costs. Obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
What are you going to start with? So are you going to go? So you got snog,
All right.
marry, avoid.
Who am I going to passionately make out with along in front of the Dolan stand? That'll
No,
really
because it's families.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm bringing the agenda to the family stand is what's going on. That's a really good question.
Great question.
I was quite into the suggestion one of the other listeners made a minute ago where they mentioned Damien Duff being kind of an interesting one. And if you haven't been following Damien Duff's managerial career so far, I believe it's Bohemians he's been with, or I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but he's been with he won the League of Ireland last year, which is, obviously not a high quality league, but it is still a league with, Shamrock Rovers and other clubs that play in the, Europa Conference League and things like that. So yeah, it's a it's a legitimate competition. We have players that have come from there. That could be an interesting one. I mean, like if you're asking me, I mean, like, are you just asking me my favorite
So
manager?
are you snogging Damien Duff? Is that what you're saying?
I might, I guess.
All
Yeah.
right.
Bit odd, really. Can we find any? I'd rather, if I'm talking about other members of the early 2000s Chelsea team, I'd rather snog Hernan Crespo. He was
Well,
very pretty.
Hasselbank had a career, didn't he?
Hasselbank is currently a manager too, actually, I think.
Mm.
Which is, yeah, oh, great shout. Great shout. Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. Oh,
Um, I d- you would nice.
avoid
I
is,
look. I've heard Des Buckingham's name being mentioned.
yeah,
I don't have any massive issues with that.
I don't think I know enough about Des Buckingham, really.
But he was at Oxford, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was the one who. Well, yeah, he did get him promoted. I think.
Yeah. It's really tough with like
Or
any
did
of the
he?
avoid ones because I just don't think that there's really anyone that we know enough about to say like, oh God, no, I really, really don't want that.
Avoid. I mean, the more I think about it, the more it would be. And I don't want to. What I don't want to do is be one of those people that goes, "Well, if this manager comes in, I'm finished with the football club or whatever." Like, I don't want to go down that road. But what I mean is, from a PR point of view,
Hmm.
if it is Matt Bloomfield or Gareth Ainsworth,
Yeah.
it's going to be really difficult then to go, where does Wickham end and where
Yep.
does Reading begin?
Yep. I
And it's
completely
it's
agree.
it's going to get really, really awkward. Not because I think they're particularly bad managers. I don't. I mean,
Nope.
Gareth Ainsworth, right? But just from a PR point of view, I just don't think that it's really the right one to go for.
I
I mean, I
completely
like
agree.
Luke Williams. I like Luke Williams a lot.
Hmm.
Um,
You've said
I,
Michael Carrick a few times
I mean, again,
recently, who's
Michael Carrick
interesting.
did all right. I think with Middlesbrough, he just couldn't meet the demands of a really big football club. We're not a really big football club, and there is an element there of him being able to come in and certainly get us playing. I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
this is a really big appointment. This is a really, really big appointment, I think.
Yeah, and he has now done, what we said he never did at Wickham, which is he has now sacked a manager, Kuig, and this will be a huge, kind of. I mean, this is going to be a big test of his decision-making ability, of course, and obviously football-facing people will be involved too. But at the end of the day, the responsibility will be his. So yeah, this is huge. And yeah, actually, I completely agree with you. By the way, I think that. Gareth Ainsworth and Matt Bloomfield would both of them be reasonable appointments. I think that both of them would do better than Noel was doing.
Yeah.
However, I also think that Rob could do with showing the Reading fans that he has made a clean break from his Wickham days, because there have been things brought over, and not always in a bad way at all. I like a bit of Phil Catchpole. I'm good with that. But I think that he does need to show that he understands that owning Wickham may have some transferable skills, but it's not the same as owning Reading Football Club. Like the Portland Hearts of Pine get higher attendances than Wickham, so it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, it's
And I can
I'm
like
just
sticking the boot in on Wickham too, so I thought I'd
yeah,
do that.
I'm just looking at like who's
My
available. I mean, look, there is a left field appointment here of a cluster of people like JB McAnuff, um, Graham Murty potentially. Like, do you go down that road again?
I feel like we talked
Of
about Graham Murty a few years ago, didn't
we
we?
did, yeah, we
Yeah,
did, and there are a lot of people out there who know the game very, very well. The one I probably wouldn't be keen on would be Ian Holloway
yeah,
because there is an element of him. I say making it about himself, but the things he says often detract from what is actually going on at the football club. Sometimes that's a real positive, sometimes that's a real negative, and he's got a history of doing that. I know he's been mentioned because Swindon are going well. I mean, you look at the top of the table and you think how much lure have Reading got? Is there a world in which they go and get the Stevenage manager,
yeah.
um, who is clearly doing very, very well this current season? I mean, they're not going to be pulling anyone away from the championship, so they're looking at out of work managers, or they're looking from managers that are already in work in a lower league. I mean, there's a lot of good managers. I mean, look, we play Carlisle on Saturday. What's to say Mark Hughes isn't coming down for a cheeky interview then?
I just went and looked up the odds just to quickly just to see who the odds makers have got down. Obviously, Gareth Ainsworth is number one. After reports earlier this season indicating they may look at him, if they do, which they
Yeah.
have now done, to, party company.
I mean,
Luke
Richie
Williams is
Wellens again. I think
Richie Wellens.
he could put. I mean, it's
I
been
don't think we'd
difficult for
pay.
him.
I don't think we'd be able to. I
This
don't
is
think we'd
it.
be able to afford him. I
This is
think
it.
that this is the thing about like how much coaches and players cost is that like people talk a lot about how like players cost too much money, and I'd say that's all that is 100% correct. They do, but players cost as much as they are worth to the club they are being bought from, like not how much they are worth to the club that is buying them. And if the club that you are buying the player from thinks that without that player they will have a much worse season, then yeah, they can charge you a ton of money. Richie Wellens, is such a factor in Leighton Orient's success. I think that you'd have a tough time getting him. They have Des Buckingham in as number four, by the way, who was the
Oh
one
well, there you go then.
you mentioned. Yeah, so that's not
Yeah.
out left field, and who of course is the other one outside of Luke Williams who's here? That would be Damien Duff. So
Oh,
so
okay.
so
Well, I
maybe
mean,
Duff is possible.
in terms of
Shelbourne.
managers that have been removed this season, so obviously Noel Hunt, Darren Ferguson went yesterday. Um, Big Ange, imagine Big Ange at Reading.
That would be fun. That would be my okay. There's my avoid. There you go.
Yeah, Paolo Pezzolano, that's not happening. Matt Bloomfield, we know, I've talked about him
Who
already.
honestly, mate, you could have told me that that was the name of like the suits that are sold in Debenhams, and I would have believed you. Like,
Um, Big Stevie Bruce.
Big Stevie Bruce. Yeah, no, I think
Uh,
we're I think if Noel and his current coaching staff, who will probably be looking over their shoulders a little bit at the moment, have shown us anything, it's that, while there are things that are coming back from like old football right now, like long throws and, the percentage of the ball going forward long more has happened. I think that the era of football that Steve Bruce and Darren Ferguson were capable of coaching has passed, unfortunately.
I mean, Michael Carrick's been out of a job since June this year.
Yeah.
Um, again, there's school of thought that maybe we wait for Liam Manning to be sacked by Norwich. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of managers knocking around. There really is.
I think the problem is nobody really knows at this stage where Coig's head is at. So I think, we've had a good chat about where what Noel wasn't doing right and what kinds of managers we'd want. And I think that those four that we've talked about and then five, maybe including Bloomfield as well, are the most likely. And I think that Holloway is probably the avoid that we would go with here, just because I don't think I think we need a guy who's ready to come in and make it about the club. So yeah.
um, completely unrelated. This one, Dan. What's better in the concourse, the pies or the hot dogs? Where have you? Like, what are you? Are you
You like the
joking?
hot dogs?
Hot dogs are on. I had one again yesterday.
Yeah.
Unreal. I need to stop eating them because they go against everything I shouldn't eat in food, and I don't even want to think about the process. But they're just so. I don't even put
Are
sauce on
you
them. I just
telling
have
me
them.
that you don't want to know how the sausage is made?
No, but it's just the bun. The bun's like sticks to it, and it's like brioche, and it's slightly sweet and salty, and the,
Yeah.
the the hot dog is, like it's thick, and it's just, yeah, and it's in a
Yeah.
foil bag, and it's not messy, and
Yeah. I
I
love a
don't
hot
I don't
dog.
do pies. Pies get everywhere. Pies get
Well,
everywhere.
did
The,
you
the
not do a
pies dropped off
pie?
big time.
What about when you do the comms? Do you not do the pie then?
Well, that was at Lincoln. That pie was decent, to be fair.
Okay. All right.
But
So they got good.
the pies at Reading, they've not been. I mean, we had it a few years ago. We had like Waitrose, and they were really good.
Yeah.
Um, these ones they're just not. But the
Yeah.
hot dogs are unreal. The hot dogs are absolutely unreal.
Uh,
Um,
I feel like there's something that's been just not left behind. They're still very popular football pies, obviously. But there's just so many other options now
yeah,
that like fans like to have, like, get the footy scran social media feeds and stuff. And, clubs want to have things that appear on that because it's good free publicity, basically. So like you'll do more fancy food and stuff like that. Everyone wants blue collar back, don't they? That's
they
always
do.
that's always where this conversation ends up.
They do. Matt Ritchie. What about Matt Ritchie? Could he do it?
I mean, he's already done more managing than Noel Hunt has this season, isn't he? So maybe, yeah, maybe he's not. It doesn't look like he's going to be coming back to the team soon because I mean that looked like a really nasty knock that he got. By the way, as old men, you and me both, we've that I've never related to a player. Or I haven't related to a player as much as I related to Richie in that moment when he got hurt. Quite as much.
Yeah.
In if you haven't seen it, you can watch the full game back, obviously on Royals TV. And when he gets hit, Richie, bless him, he's giving like a proper like sturdy challenge to the guy who's just knocked a brafer around, and he gives him a proper sturdy challenge, and he comes out much worse. And it's that kind of thing where it's like you just step wrong in the yard or something, and you
Mm.
do something in your back, and you can just see him immediately sort of like go for his lower back. And I've been like, I've been there.
Yeah.
I've been like, yeah,
That's
I can do
brutal.
that. Like, I
That's
sometimes
brutal.
hurt my ass when I'm climbing out the bathtub as well.
Yeah. I'll
Anyway,
leave you with
best of
this.
luck to him.
I was just looking on Facebook see if there's any more comments because I did X and I'm looking at Facebook and
Don't go there,
someone
mate.
has said, "Don't agree. Hunter's been done over. Your views haven't helped." I mean, I think they're giving me too much credit
Yeah.
here in the nicest possible way. Like I don't think the management team have gone. Oh, what does that idiot from the Tilehurst end say? Oh, yeah, we'll sack
They
him
were
now.
like,
I,
they
I
were
don't
like,
think they've done that, to be honest
we're
with you.
actually
I'd
like
be
super.
flattered. I'd be
Yeah.
flattered, but I don't think that that is the case.
They came
So
in and they were like, I'm just imagining Joe Jacobson coming into Rob Coig's office. He's like, "Sir, a second video of a man in a car has been dropped."
I did it at home today, actually. I had full intention of doing it at the stadium, but I just, yeah,
I
I just couldn't
really,
be
just for
bothered.
the sake of the joke, just for me, like every time, even if you are home, can you go and get in your car for that? Because it always
Yeah.
cracks me up. Like, I don't know why. Like, you just look a little bit
Mm.
like a man in the back of his Uber who's doing his best to not involve the Uber driver in his
But
conversation.
this is how farcical it gets, right? So there was this guy who on X, the one I did yesterday after the game,
Yeah.
said, "What is it with these needy influencers and them doing videos from the car?" And I was like, and I looked his, I mean, he's clearly a fake one. It's clearly like an avatar or something. But I was looking at his like the things that he follows or they follow, and there's no reference at all to Reading Football Club. So I don't know how
Mm.
he stumbled across that and like these needy influencers.
Or he's just really
Mate,
into
I'd love
influence.
to be an influencer.
Yeah.
Imagine the money you get from being an influencer.
I do know the money you get. I know an influencer here. She's a very nice woman. She's got like 250 something odd thousand followers.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, and it's yeah, she's very very nice. But like the way in which the she talks about her job sometimes is like,
Does
what
she
on
sit in her car
earth
and do
is
it
this
though?
world? Like, no, she doesn't sit in her car. She goes around and like takes pictures of coffees and things. Anyway, yeah, I have found all of that quite funny in the last few weeks. Like, I guess, yeah, I don't, yeah, I mean, like when we're giving our opinions and stuff, we're just giving our opinions, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Listen,
like,
we're
I don't, I if I don't know, I think football is just a game of opinions. Everyone's gonna
yeah, of course it
have
is.
their
And
opinion.
and this is the thing, and that's what I said a couple of weeks ago. Like the art debate is it's been wiped out in
Mm,
in recent times because people just can't like if you have an opinion, someone doesn't agree with you're instantly wrong. And
yeah,
like
nuance
it's
is
not
tough in the age
yeah.
of the in the age of the internet for sure. Yeah, I think that like I think the people yeah, there were a few like things I was like, oh, this doesn't help and like stuff like that, and it's like I don't know. I would think that like that's overselling the influence that you and I have. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
I
Like I
don't, well,
appreciate any of you guys that listen. You know.
yeah, I mean, it just made me laugh. Your views haven't helped. All right, sounds
Mm.
mate.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
will. I will zip it
yeah.
forever. I won't. Well, I mean, we were going to do a preview, but we can't because we don't know what we're previewing. We
I
know we're
don't think
playing
we need
tomorrow.
to. I think this week was like normally I give the episodes like funny titles or whatever, or what I think are funny. And you know, I think this one will probably go down as sort of like a Noel Hunt, sacked kind of podcast. So I think that we needed to give it the respect that it needed. And again, talking about that nuance, like we had the opinion last week and the week before and things like that, that like the football's not good enough, and for that reason, Noel needs to be, and is not showing signs of getting better, and for that reason, Noel needs to be
Mm.
moved on. At the same time, giving him abuse or like going at him personally when he
Yeah,
is
it's bad. It was
servant that
bad.
he's
I
been
didn't
for the
like it
club
yesterday.
is bad, and like
Didn't
that
like
was
it.
not respectful, and you know that some of like the way in which that was communicated in the last few weeks wasn't always perfect, but I think also, you know, that's football to a certain degree.
Yeah.
It is as I've been going through this first season with the Hearts of Pine, I've been kind of thinking about what it is I like about it and football and all these kinds of things. And part of it is the vitriol and the aggression and the anger and all of these kinds of things. And because it's like a safe space, a safe environment in which to experience those emotions that when they're around your friends and your family can be quite volatile and could cause issues, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, of
Football is a
course.
place for us to pour those emotions into.
Yeah.
And so I can totally understand over the last few weeks, you know, some fans getting a little overly, you know, in one direction in the last couple of weeks. But I think that, yeah, that's the nuance that we've wanted to give. The on the footballing side, we just didn't think it was going anywhere. But at the same time, you know, respect the manager, back the team, back the club. And yeah, whoever comes in, we're going to back them. Hopefully we have a better set of results to enjoy, and hopefully we have an identity to enjoy, and I think that will help to almost like late kick off the Kuig regime, because it's
Yeah,
almost
it has
it's
to be.
sputtered a little bit in the last, you know, month or two.
and we said that it probably wouldn't be in full swing until they had their man in.
Hmm.
Um,
So here we go.
so we're getting that now. We're getting that now.
Yeah.
Listen, massive thanks to Noel Hunt for everything he did, everything he tried to do, not just in the first team, um, hot seat, but he was interim manager in April 23 until the end of the season after he joined in 2022 as a senior professional development coach. And obviously took over officially as the manager in December of last year after Sellers left. So look, beyond that, he achieved good things as a player. Good player to watch, very likable, a lot
And he
of
did
energy, a
help
lot of
us get through
passion.
that
Yeah,
era after Sellers, like you
of course
said,
he did.
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
steadied it, and he really tried his best, and you could see he always tried his best. So these things just don't work out. You make decisions based on what you see, and it doesn't work out, and that's sport in general, not just football. So we wish him the absolute best. He was on this very pod when he joined back in December. You can go and listen to that if you want to, for old time's sake. It's still available. Other than that, we are onwards and upwards. We will obviously keep you posted with reaction, articles, everything else to a possible new manager appointment. The under 18s are in action tomorrow or today because you listen to this on Monday. Again, I can't do a pod without it. 7 o'clock kickoff at the Madstad. The Stad DSEL, I think it's £4 for adults and it's like a quid for kids. So it's pretty good to go and watch the under 18s if you can do that. Of
Yep.
course, it's the open training session as well. The mega shop have a mega sale by all accounts. That'd be good fun. And then we're back home to Carlisle in the first round of the FA Cup. Mark Hughes's lads come down all the way down to Berkshire for that game. So plenty of
Actually,
action on the pitch.
I'll briefly say that because the Kuigs, obviously Missy Kuig is the one that's doing the mega store and stuff. I can already buy things over here in America. So,
Can you?
hey, you know what? We were being nuanced about the Kuigs there, but I'll say, Missy, good job. Like I appreciate that I can already purchase
Getting Ross's
Reading
threads.
jerseys again. Yeah, now I
Yeah.
can get my threads. So thank you, Missy. Do you want to take the training session on Monday?
Who is going to take the training
Maybe
session
the
today? Who is
dog.
going
Maybe
to?
the dog could take the training session.
Oh, the
What's it
dogs are
called?
lovely. The dogs are.
Yeah.
Lady Wickham goes
Lady
dancing,
Wickham. There we go.
and
Yes.
what's the other one? They're
Roy,
cracking dogs, though.
I don't know. Royal muck up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
We'll be back. This is obviously an early one for us, but we had to push it through because of circumstances. Of course, you will understand that. We'll be back after Carlisle. We might even be back in the interim if we get any manager in between now and then. Who knows? It's going to be an interesting week anyway, and we're back in the hunt for a new manager. No pun intended. I realise what I've just said.
I didn't
It's
realize what you
dreadful.
just said until you said it, but
It's
I liked
dreadful.
it. Yeah. Wow.
I genuinely didn't mean that. Honestly, I didn't. I didn't mean to say that.
Well, listeners, you can decide if you believe him, and
No.
we'll get your reaction next week.
Um, have a good start to your week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon, mate. And
You as
we
well.
will see you soon. Thanks for listening, everybody. And come on, you arse.
I've just seen that Carlisle are third in National League. It's going to happen again, isn't it? Yeah.